The origin of a closed heart. There are people who walk through life with a calm face and an armored soul. People who love the idea of connection, but flinch the moment someone tries to get close. These aren't the cold ones, the soulless ones, or the arrogant ones. They're the ones who grew up in homes where affection was unpredictable, where emotions were currency, where love came with small print you had to read between the screams, the silences, or the disappointments. They're the ones who learned young that intimacy was not a safe place to collapse into. It was a battlefield where comfort could turn into chaos without warning. And once a child receives that kind of education, their nervous system becomes the professor of their adulthood. The world never sees the full story. They only see the adult, distant, composed, independent, controlled. But they never see the origin, the child who had to teach themselves how to survive in an environment where their own heart felt like too heavy a liability to carry unprotected. For these people, the seed is planted early. Maybe it was the parent who loved you one day and ignored you the next. Maybe it was the home filled with loud threats but quiet apologies. Maybe it was a father who walked out, or a mother who emotionally collapsed and handed you responsibilities you were never built to hold. Maybe it was being told to toughen up when all you needed was reassurance, or maybe it was the constant walking on eggshells, trying to predict the storms of adults who never learned to control their own emotions. Whatever the details were, the lesson carved into your psychology was simple. The people who are supposed to protect you can also be the ones who wound you the deepest. So you began to shrink your emotional needs until they became invisible. You began to turn inward, building internal control to compensate for the lack of external safety. That's how you became hyper-independent, not by choice, not by personality, but by survival instinct. You learned to self-soothe, self-manage, self-correct, and self-carry. And even as an adult, that instinct still whispers, don't depend on anyone, don't need anything, don't expose a weakness they can use later. This creates a blueprint, an emotional architecture built on avoidance, distance, and control. Not because you don't care, but because you care too much, too deeply, and too silently. Closeness exposes your unguarded self, and your unguarded self is the version that was hurt the most. So when someone tries to get close now, you feel it in your body before you feel it in your mind. A tightening in the chest, a shift in your breathing, a quiet panic disguised as disinterest. Your fight or flight doesn't show up as yelling or running. It shows up as shrinking. It shows up as pulling back, overthinking, getting distant, finding flaws, making excuses. You tell yourself you're being rational, discerning, uninterested. But the truth is simpler and sharper. Intimacy activates all the alarms you buried years ago. Your brain warns you that vulnerability means exposure. Exposure means uncertainty, and uncertainty leads back to the same emotional ambushes you barely survived as a child. People mistake this for emotional coldness. But the real story is fear. Fear buried under discipline, fear disguised as composure. The ones who fear intimacy the most are often the ones who crave it with the greatest intensity. They want to be seen, but not misused. They want to be understood, but not misinterpreted. They want loyalty, but they fear the cost of needing it. They want love, but they refuse to lose themselves inside it. So they move through relationships like warriors scouting unfamiliar terrain, curious but cautious, longing but guarded, romantic but unreachable. This paradox creates a silent war within them, the desire to connect, fighting against the instinct to protect. And the instinct usually wins. because the instinct was trained in a home where needing someone made you vulnerable to their moods, their neglect, their absence, or their emotional volatility. But what people don't see is the toll this takes. Living guarded sounds strong until you feel the empty echo inside it, until you realize that your solitude, while safe, is suffocating, until the nights get quiet and the world stops moving, and you finally hear the truth you've been avoiding. You're not distant by nature, you're distant by survival. And survival becomes exhausting once danger is no longer present. You begin to feel the weight of all the connections that slip through your fingers, not because you lacked love, but because you lacked trust. The guilt of pushing away people who genuinely cared, the frustration of repeating the same emotional patterns with new faces, the loneliness that looks like independence on the outside, but feels like exile on the inside, the realization that you have mastered strength but never learned safety. Becoming Indeceptor is the code they never wanted you to learn. A psychological war map for men, forbidden teachings fused with modern strategy for influence, dominance, and self-mastery. If you want peace, prepare for war. The roots of this fear run deeper than most people understand. It's not just mommy issues, daddy issues, or trust issues. It's micro-traumas. It's emotional inconsistencies. It's 1,000 small experiences. Being ignored, being dismissed, being shamed for feelings, being used as the emotional caretaker for broken adults. It's homes where silence felt heavy and affection felt conditional. It's childhoods where you had to be the responsible one, the strong one, the composed one. So now, in adulthood, you don't know how to accept softness. You don't know how to surrender control. You don't know how to let someone in without calculating the risks. You don't know how to feel safe without being alone. Because somewhere in your mind, solitude still equals protection, and intimacy still equals danger. And then comes the breaking point, the moment where your inner patterns collide with your outer reality. You start noticing the repetition. Every relationship ends the same way. Every argument follows the same script. Every moment of closeness triggers the same retreat. You realize you're not running from people. You're running from yourself. From the younger version of you who still believes love is unpredictable. From the memory of being disappointed, abandoned, or misunderstood. From the wound that was never given a voice, only armor. That's when awareness becomes unavoidable. You see how your childhood created a version of you that is brilliant at surviving, but inexperienced at connecting. You see how your strength came from necessity, not design. And in that moment, you face a truth that is both painful and liberating. Your fear of intimacy isn't who you are, it's who you had to be. That is the origin of a closed heart. Not weakness, not coldness, not ego, but survival, protection, adaptation. And until this origin is understood, nothing can change. Because self-mastery doesn't just mean controlling your desires or your discipline. It means confronting the emotional patterns that shaped you before you even knew what love was supposed to feel like. Before you can open your heart, you must understand why your heart learned to close. And that is the first step toward unlearning the fear, rewriting the script, and becoming someone who no longer confuses intimacy with danger or closeness with a loss of control. There comes a point where the guarded person realizes that the walls they built for protection have become their prison. A moment where solitude stops feeling like peace and starts feeling like starvation. You can only hide from yourself for so long before the silence becomes too loud, too revealing, too heavy. And in that silence, a deeper truth surfaces. Healing does not require you to destroy your armor. It requires you to understand it. Every defense mechanism had a purpose. Every emotional retreat had a reason. Every wall was built by a version of you who deserves safety, even if they never received it. So the transformation doesn't begin with letting people in. It begins with letting yourself see the architecture of your own fear. Only then can you unarm the heart with precision instead of panic, slowly dismantling a fortress that once kept you alive but now keeps you alone. The first step is recognizing that intimacy doesn't demand intensity. It demands consistency. People who grew up afraid of closeness often expect connection to come in dramatic waves, emotional surges, grand gestures, overwhelming chemistry. But real intimacy grows in repetition, steady communication, predictable behavior, reliability that rewires the nervous system. When you've lived through emotional volatility, peace feels suspicious at first, stability feels foreign, being treated gently feels unreal. But that discomfort isn't a sign to run, it's a sign that you're healing. Your nervous system is learning a new language, a language where closeness doesn't equal chaos, a language where affection is not a threat, a language where someone leaning in doesn't signal an incoming emotional storm. It takes discipline to stay present long enough for your body to understand that safety can exist without isolation. Healing intimacy isn't about finding the right person. It's about becoming the version of yourself who can handle the right person. It's about realizing that connection doesn't weaken you, it sharpens you. It expands your emotional range, strengthens your communication, and deepens your humanity. You stop choosing distance as your shield and start choosing honesty as your weapon. You stop suppressing your emotions and start directing them. You stop shrinking in fear and start standing in awareness. That is the unarming of the heart, not a collapse, not a surrender, a transition from survival mode to connection mode, from emotional exile to emotional intelligence, from the haunted child you once were to the intentional adult you are becoming. Because self-mastery is not complete until you can master your heart without letting it destroy your identity. And intimacy is not weakness unless you enter it unprepared. Once you learn the architecture of your own fear, you gain the power to open your heart without letting the past dictate its rhythm. This is what it means to heal intimacy, to build a connection that doesn't demand you abandon yourself, but requires you to evolve into someone who no longer fears love because they finally understand themselves. Thus, remember, we are in Deceptor. In the alchemy of lust, you'll be taken deep into the ancient and forgotten discipline of sexual transmutation, a principle once reserved for monks, warriors, kings, and creators. The Deceptor archive is the complete vault. Every lesson, every revelation, every psychological blueprint I've ever recorded, handcrafted to help you break chains, build discipline, and become undefeatable in a world built to deceive men. No ads, no algorithms, no distractions.